And now, Lifestyles Unlimited presents the Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single-family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Welcome to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. I'm Mike Harrison, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. It's my privilege to be joining you today. If this is your first time tuning in to the radio show, I do want to share what Lifestyles Unlimited is. We are a real estate educational and mentoring group. We were founded in Houston, Texas by Dale Walmsley over 30 years ago. We have members in all 50 states, and we teach people how to successfully retire by buying their life back, one cash flowing asset at a time, one chunk at a time, and you compound those and you stack them on top of one another. It's a method that's been, well, it's worked for thousands of people, have retired themselves all across this country. 10 years ago, I discovered Lifestyles Unlimited and began following the methods taught by Dale Walmsley, the same methods that Dale Walmsley used to retire himself in 2.5 years. Yes, financial freedom, and it has changed my life ever since. I'm here in Dallas-Fort Worth. I own houses throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth market, but I also invest in apartment communities, not only in Texas, all over Texas, but also outside of Texas. My focus for the last few years has been multifamily investing, and I will continue that strategy for the foreseeable future. There are no economic indicators that tell me otherwise. Multifamily investing is strong, and the information I see and I read backs that up. Now, not to say that outside of Texas there aren't great opportunities, because there are. There are great opportunities all over this country. Georgia, Arizona, Tennessee, Florida, Oklahoma, Indiana. Now, many people think that the multifamily market may be saturated and that there are not any good cash flowing deals out there. And that is just wrong. The real estate markets remain very strong. You need to know how to analyze them. You need to know what you're looking at. You need to put in the metrics for the economy today. But the market remains strong, and it remains strong in Texas as well. And we're going to talk about Texas specifically, why there is a bright future for multifamily investing here in Texas. And to help me do that, I've brought a guest on the show today from Houston, Texas, real estate investor and Lifestyles Unlimited member, my friend David. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Hey, I really appreciate it, and I love talking real estate investing with you, specifically multifamily investing. Obviously, that's what you're into. That's been a focus of mine, but I wanted to bring you on the show. I found an article and came out just a couple of weeks ago, very recent. And I wanted to share it just because there is a lot of economic doom and gloom out there. But I'll tell you that doom and gloom is not in the multifamily market. And that article comes from the Houston Business Journal specifically. Listener, if you're wanting to look it up, the title is A Bright 2023 Investment Outlook for Multifamily Real Estate in Texas. David, you are a lead investor right there in Houston. What are you seeing in the multifamily space?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I mean, certainly, really any market, there's always a challenge here or there. Certainly there are some expenses that might be, difficult or a little less in our control than we'd like. But the good news is the counterbalance to that is the income of the properties just keeps going up and up, right? Rent growth keeps going up and up. Exactly like you said, Mike, I don't know if that's true absolutely everywhere, but just with the job growth, with the population growth that we're seeing all across Texas, but certainly in the greater Houston area where I'm located, it's just a constant. It's a wonderful problem to have that we can't seem to build apartments fast enough. We can't seem to renovate apartments fast enough in our part of the multifamily world because there are so many people moving here.
It's truly amazing. It hasn't tapered off, and I will even tell you, as hot as it was in 2021, and then as interest rates started climbing and inflation reared its ugly head, I really expected some tapering, but the metrics remain the same. People come to Texas. Look, we've got abundant energy, and that doesn't mean oil and gas. We lead the country in renewables, in creating renewable energy sources. Our business-friendly state and local governments, that's huge. That's one reason why I invest in places where there are business-friendly governments. College, for the most part, is still affordable, so people come here for that. But the corporate relocations, they're just not slowing down. And David, I did want to hit on the fact, there's a lot of new construction being built out there, but talk a little bit more just how demand is outpacing even the new construction of apartment communities.
Yes. So, I mean, exactly like you just mentioned, with corporate relocations coming here, it seems like every week there's something new being announced. And then obviously with that, the jobs come, and so do a lot of those families. They either get transferred in, or there's a hiring boom that the people have to come from somewhere. And so just the population growth is just off the charts. I think the last article I saw on that said for the last 20 some odd years in a row, Texas has been the number one state for inbound migration, which is just incredible. And because of that, exactly like you're seeing, we are seeing we just can't even really keep up with the demand on the apartment side. We have just in the day-to-day operations of any kind of apartment complex, any given month, there's a handful of people that move out for one reason or another. Yeah. And it's literally as soon as we can change the lock and repaint the unit.
And I looked something up. It's from RealPage Analytics. And they said that, the existing unit count in the state of Texas has grown by 140,000 new apartments over the last 2 years. However, and that's huge supply. Someone out there may say, hey, that's huge supply. But demand is even greater. The demand has been 190,000 units in the past 2 years. So that's 50,000 units greater than we can build. Why do you think we can't outbuild it? You would think because of this, that everyone's just going to come to Texas and build an apartment community, and that's not exactly happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, in my opinion. Number one, it just takes longer to get done than anyone would believe, I think is part of it. These building projects, there's typically a 3, 4, 5 year runway to get these things done. So if someone decided today to do exactly what you just said, they're not going to be putting anything in the ground and moving anybody in, for 3 to 5 years. So certainly there's just a lag time on that. And then beyond that, I think we mentioned it last segment, the population growth has been in the favor of Texas for multiple decades at this point. And I think on some level, everyone has expected it to slow down or start tapering off at some point. And if anything, it's just accelerated and continued to really since the pandemic and even starting prior to that.
You remind me of a good point. I've got some friends that do a lot of new construction, commercial roofing, specifically for multifamily properties. And I'll tell you what's happened. You're right. It takes 4 or 5 years for liftoff, so to speak. Someone says, hey, I want to build an apartment community, and they go into the planning, the design, the land acquisition, the survey, the architecture firm. You got to put the plans out for bid, and then they come back and reevaluate, and just the whole process, the costing, and then finally the construction starts at least 4 to 5 years after the planning. But I was talking a few months back with some of my roofer buddies, and they're telling me that a lot of the projects that normally would be kicking off, right, continuing the trend, they started pulling back when interest rates went up, which tells me 4 or 5 years from now, there's going to be another lag in there's not going to be enough units coming online, especially if people keep relocating to Texas. And it just remains strong. And there's another thing that I read, and I found this was fascinating. Like you said, corporate companies keep coming to Texas for different reasons. But did you see anything? They're talking about how the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis in Europe is now causing foreign companies to come to Texas. Have you seen anything on that?
I've seen a few articles on that. It seems like a different name, big names, ones that most of us probably know. It seems like at least every few weeks there's another big announcement. I know I'm based in the Woodlands, so suburb on the north side of Houston, and there's quite a few corporate headquarters here. And it seems like they just can't even build office space fast enough because of these corporate relocations that you mentioned. I know last segment you also alluded to, renewable energy. I think people think oil and gas often when they think of Texas, but the renewable energy component in Texas leading the country in that, and has for so long. It's a counterintuitive thing, but it makes it really appealing even for these large companies who they want to get in on some of these government grants or subsidies or whatever there may be for focusing on renewable energy on the corporate headquarters side. It's just one more thing stacked on the deck in favor of relocating to Texas, along with all the other things that we've talked about.
Yeah, a lot of these companies have these requirements. They say that they want a portion of their energy usage to be from a renewable source. And again, like you said, people think Texas is all oil and gas. And honestly, we can't pull enough natural gas out of the ground. Just my opinion, we need to pull more. But we're leading essentially the country in creating renewable energy production. I think over 14% of all renewable energy created in the last couple of years was created in Texas. But back to European companies coming to Texas, it even goes further. They're talking about potentially if this war drains on and Europe, it's their own fault, right? They set themselves up to pull oil and gas from Russia. That's not happening. But if this thing drags out, they're talking about potentially European manufacturing coming to Texas. Can you imagine adding that on top of it and all the jobs that would create?
No, it just seems like we can barely keep up as is, and I mean that in a great way. Obviously, I cannot even imagine what that would do, because those are that's our client base, right? Yeah. Those are our residents is good, blue collar, well paid, hardworking people, and we're just giving them a great, beautiful, well cared for place to live. Those workers that is exactly the ideal client base for all of us in the apartment business.
Yeah, that's we're getting into the Lifestyles Unlimited model of what we focus on. Dave, why don't you share a little bit about what that is, and then I'll chime in some of as I see the advantages, what it means to us.
Yes, absolutely. So here at Lifestyles, all of us within the Lifestyles investor community, we practice what Dell coined the best product, best price model. So we want to have the nicest product on the block, but rent it for a fair price, right? We're not trying to be the highest price out there. You've got a risk profile if that's who you are, if that's how you market. But if we're offering a great product at a great price relative to other people in the market, we're just in a great position to frankly keep our properties occupied all the time. And as well, you mentioned last segment as well, to really be able to review our residents and to be selective based on, okay, who has a job that looks secure. It isn't a seasonal thing. There's a lot of different things that we can do. Certainly, obviously, goes without saying, complying with all fair housing always, all that sort of thing. But it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, who's going to be a great family, and at least in the case of most of my properties, who's going to be a great family in this place? They're looking for a home, not just a place to live.
Let's pick it up on the other side. I want to continue talking about the advantages of the Lifestyles Unlimited model. My name's Mike Harrison.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
Lifestyles Unlimited members share their stories and strategies for success at case study events.
If you got laid off tomorrow, what would you do? Would you have to be working at McDonald's or wait to try and find another job with the downsizing the economy? Kept on coming to meetings, even with David Fisher online and stuff like that, but still we just we need to make the jump.
So we kept praying for time to get this job done, to be able to find the properties. How do we find the properties? How do you find the time? And God answered our prayers, and he got downsized from his corporate job.
But they didn't buy just one house, right?
No, they did not. You're rehabbing house number
9 right now.
9.
Wow.
So every month, the cash flow is $3,200. Okay, the equity of all the houses is up to $280,000.
Join us this month and learn from people just like you. Check in person and online dates at lucasestudy.com. That's lucasestudy.com.
Creating the lifestyle you've always wanted. You're hearing Lifestyles Unlimited's Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. I'm Mike Harrison, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. If you'd like to learn more about real estate investing, please send me an email. My email address is askmike@luinc.com. Now, if you're interested in investing in real estate like I do, if you're interested in investing in multifamily apartment communities like we're talking about, it's a very strong market for multifamily apartment communities. We're talking about just Texas right now, but there are strong opportunities all across the country. If you would like to learn how to do that and then meet the lead investors like David, who's on the show today, and potentially converse with David, decide if David's next investment is something that potentially you might want to invest in, or any of our other lead investors, well, then I suggest you start with our free workshop and learn a little bit more about Lifestyles Unlimited and real estate investing. You can do that at our free workshop livestream.com. If you just type in freeworkshoplivestream.com, no spaces, it will take you to our workshop page. You can sign up and you can essentially listen in. It's not a video. It's interactive. You can ask questions and you can see how we make money 5 ways on single family investments, how we make money 6 ways on apartment communities. If you'd like to join Lifestyles Unlimited, you can do that at financialfreedomlivestream.com. We will teach you how to invest effectively in real estate. We will teach you our Lifestyles Unlimited model for investing. And that's what I'm talking to David about. David's a lead investor in Houston, Texas, and multifamily investing continues to be very bright. But David, let's review that Lifestyles Unlimited model. It's that best product, best price. Essentially, that gives us the ability to market our product to in its workforce. It's not necessarily Class A. We're marketing to the masses, right? We want a product where 70 or 80% of people potentially could live in our product. And then at the same time, like you said, we want it to be the best. If there's 4 apartment communities, 1 on each corner, we want ours to stand out. We want it to be the best value, to be clean, to be functional. Any other thoughts on the Lifestyles Unlimited model that gives us those advantages, David?
Well, one thing that I was thinking through as you were mentioning that, again, just kind of reminding folks of why that is such a powerful model. One other thing I was reminded of as we've been talking about all of the things that Texas has in its favor, and I agree with you. I'm with you. I invest elsewhere in the country as well with other lead investors. But one thing I was thinking through as we've been talking about all of this is one of the most powerful things about that for us here locally is how affordable the cost of living is here relative to so many other places in the country. And that is just such a powerful advantage from our standpoint because we see all of this net migration that is coming into Houston, coming into Texas, and elsewhere. Obviously, there's other states that are growing in the same category as well. But one thing we're seeing is a lot of that migration is out of very high cost, high tax parts of the country into lower cost of living, lower tax environments. And then when you combine the lower cost of living with best product, best price, oftentimes we're offering people a better, nicer place to live than whatever they're leaving, and at a more affordable rate, which is just, again, an incredible combination. That's why our residents all love to live in our property because they're cared for. They're nice places. They have a property owner who cares about making it a nice place to live, combined with a very reasonable cost, at least relative to most other things out there.
Yeah. If you've got a great product and it's well run, you fixed everything, you've put in good management, you've got a reactive maintenance team in place so that when the resident needs something, you're going to have occupancies that are in the upper 90%. And there is nothing sweeter than having a functional apartment, multifamily apartment community that is running well, and you've got occupancies at 90%, which basically means there's a line of people waiting to come rent a unit from you. And if you've got that, then you've got a great business running. Let's talk about the other side of the coin, David. So I think we made a case for multifamily investing demand. The demand for units in Texas is not going to go away, and it's going to continue. But let's talk about rent growth. We can get that resident into that property, into that unit. Are we going to have the ability to grow rent?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is the name of the game for our business, certainly. And so far, what we're seeing, I saw an article even this morning, as a matter of fact, that over the last couple of months, kind of throughout the winter, there were some really tiny dips across the country as far as instead of natural rent growth, there was a tiny bit of rent decline. Again, this was just a national average, so nowhere specific. And actually, the headline of the article was that has now been reversed and rent growth is back on. And so I think a big thing with that is what we find, and this is true in apartments, it's true in houses, winter is always a little bit slower than spring and summer. If somebody can help it, they'd rather not move over the holidays. And so what we're seeing is now that we're starting to get back into closer to spring, it's coming it's hard to believe, but spring break's not that far from now.
It's not.
With that, we're already seeing rent growth pick right back up. And we saw even throughout the winter across my portfolio is we're seeing rent growth numbers that we would not have expected to see throughout the winter, which would, of course, lead us to believe as we get more into quote-unquote leasing season in the spring and summer, there's even more demand. We can probably push that thing even higher than we were planning on because of that.
David, you had found and purchased a property within the last year, and I want to talk about that property. What was your business plan on this specific property?
So this property, it was really not performing at its potential in a lot of different ways. At this particular property, it averaged about low to mid 80s occupancy, so 82, 84, somewhere in that range. As a matter of fact, I was there last week checking on construction, just kind of walking around, keeping an eye on the crews, making sure everything's looking like it's supposed to according to the plan. And I had a resident walk up to me. She has lived there for 14 years, and she told me, you and your team are doing such a phenomenal job. I can tell such a huge difference. We have never seen anyone care for us as residents or this property the way it is being now.
That melts my heart every time. And it's happened to me personally, and I love to hear that. It's a good feeling, and you were right. There is something, maybe it's a dopamine rush, but when you're looking at before and after of apartment units, it's awesome the way it looks. I think we may have a mutual friend on Facebook, and he's got a deep value play in Dallas, and he'll have a unit turnover. And he was walking one the other day, and he basically is just describing, he's saying, if you can only understand just how bad this unit smells. I think they had dogs or cats or something in there, and then bug infestation. And he goes and he rips all that out, and he cleans it up, and he just makes it an awesome. I mean, you look at the before and after, and you're like, there's no way that's the same place. And you being on a 160 unit property, I'm sure you've got more than your fair share of stuff like that going on.
No, that's right. It is a big project. It has been we are 7 months into this construction project at this point. Thankfully, we're on the back half of it, so we're getting there. But yes, there is no shortage of things to do, which exactly like I was mentioning earlier. It is a team effort as it relates to staff, contractors, investors, even vendors, right? Insurance folks and everything else. It is to turn a big ship, and this property is big for me, but not big relative to so many others within lifestyles. To turn a big ship takes a lot of effort and a lot of people to get that done, but it is just wonderful to see the results when that happens.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's an awesome feeling. So, David, what was the size of your apartment community prior to purchasing this one? You said this one's 160. How big was the other one?
Yeah, so I've done a total of 4 apartments in my career. So I'll kind of start at the first one. It was the one just my wife and I owned. Kind of wanted to learn the business a little bit. So that was just a little 6-unit.
Okay.
Then we did a 20 unit. Then we did a 5-unit and a 160 unit. So kind of taking some sizable step ups on every one, or at least trying to.
Yeah. Now, speak to us how the economy of scale comes with going to these larger units. Would you say that you're working more on the bigger properties, or you're just working in a different manner?
So, yes, it's very much a different kind of work. I'm a big fan of Michael Gerber and the E-Myth, and he kind of his big contribution, I think, to the business world was the idea of working on your business more so than working in your business. And so in the bigger the properties get, the more of that time is slanted in favor of overall business plan, overall execution, and less away from, day-to-day overseeing on-site staff, that sort of thing, right? So it's just as much work, but it is very much different work as you get some of that economies of scale.
So you're managing a business as opposed to running a business.
That's right.
Now, 160, you'll have a manager. Tell me about your staff on this property.
Yeah, so we have a full-time manager, and we have a combined assistant manager / leasing agent.
Okay.
Those two are both doing a phenomenal job. And then we have a full-time maintenance individual, and then also a kind of a combination. Porter is sort of the industry terminology, but assistant maintenance and or anything else that needs doing type of individual.
Yeah, catch all, clean the trash, that sort of thing. And that which seems to be a daily process. You're always having to pick up something, especially on a community this size. So talk to me about your comfort level. You started with a 6-unit by yourself. How has that changed to where you are today?
So I'm in the fortunate position that outside of real estate, I'd run some decent-sized teams, and I used to own a business where we had a good-sized team. So I have always been comfortable overseeing a decent-sized team. In this particular case with this project, it was, I'll be honest, day one was a little bit overwhelming because it was, like I said, there was a lot of deferred maintenance. There was a lot yet to do, and we didn't have the whole phenomenal team that we have in place now. We didn't have them all hired day one. So it took some time to build out the team, to really start getting implementation and execution of the business plan done. But it's in hindsight, we can see it all has really come together phenomenally well. But there was certainly that first day, after we closed, go to the property and kind of start the meetings, start lining up contractors. It was a bit overwhelming, that's for sure.
4 employees, put that all together and making sure everybody's got essentially a definition of what their responsibilities are. So, David, you're managing not only the asset but the partnership. What's more difficult?
Well, I would imagine I've got phenomenal partners, but I'd imagine if I had some difficult partners, that would probably be difficult. But I'm in the fortunate position that a lot of my investors are good friends or folks that have invested with me multiple times in the past. And so because of that part is thankfully pretty easy. I've got some good folks that I'm working with on the partnership side. On the asset management side, that's sort of that oversight of the business plan that we were talking about. That is, it has been a lot of work for sure. But we are just now, even like we talked about earlier in the show, going into peak leasing season, getting our occupancy up, getting towards the end of our construction project. We are really now coming into the phase where over the next month and several months, we're really going to see the benefit of all of the last 7 months of hard work we've been doing. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, you've got the heavy lift up front. You put the business plan in place, put the management in place. fix everything, turn the units, right? And then that fixing sometimes means you're having to replace people. But again, back to our earlier conversation, you're in an incredible market. And if you're running that property properly and you are following the Lifestyles model, the best product, best price, David, you're not going to have a problem, and it's going to be a great investment going forward. My name's Mike Harrison. I want you to remember it's not the money, it's the lifestyle. Make it a great day.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.